Welcome to the peak of Mount Olympus. Today, a war is going on here between four different World War II factions. The US Army, the German Army, the Russian Army, comrade, as well as the Japanese Army are all going to be fighting at the top of Mount Olympus. But that's not all. There's only about 1,000 soldiers apiece up at the top of Mount Olympus, but surrounding the mountain is 1 million of each of those factions. Not only is there 1 million of each, but each faction additionally has 100 of their respective tanks. The Americans have the Shermans, the Germans have the Panzer Vs, the Russians have the T-34s, and the Japanese have the Chihas. Only time will tell who will win this epic battle royale, but if you do enjoy the video, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe with notifications on, and comment down below. Let's get into this thing. What's up, gamers? I'm here to tell you about Instant Gaming. Instant Gaming is an amazing place where you can get some fire deals on all sorts of video games. Seriously, it's like 60 to 95% off, as you can see here. These are all of the Star Wars titles they have. They literally have every Star Wars title. You can also get XCOM here, Men of War Assault Squad 2. All of the games I play on the channel you can buy here for extremely cheap prices. If you use my affiliate link in the description, it helps me out a ton. So thank you guys for listening to this sponsorship, and thank you to Instant Gaming for continuing to sponsor the channel. Alrighty then, gamers, let's get this thing moving and grooving, especially up top at Mount Olympus here, where the initial fighting is going on. The Americans have shotguns, meanwhile all the other units have their respective rifles, so I'm not entirely sure how well the Americans will do. It is pretty close quarters up here. The rest of the Americans down below actually all have their SMGs, the Thompsons, which in this game they call assault rifles, which don't know about the accuracy of that labeling, but that's okay. Either way, the Germans do seem to be doing the best up here. Of course, this is not going to be representative of the rest of the battle. There will be tanks down below in play and a whole lot more soldiers, so whatever happens up here is more just whoever gets to control Olympus during the battle and have like maybe 1,000 soldiers up here, which could be kind of cool, but the rest of the fighting down below will be very, very different. Either way, the Japanese rushing the Germans over this way, getting into some shenanigans over here. Look at this, all the fighting, all the death, all the carnage. It's brutal, baby. It's not that brutal, they're just kind of shooting each other. And then there's a number of Russians I just noticed trapped in here. I didn't realize they spawned in here. Well, I mean, that's nice. It seems like, yeah, there's no more Russians on the outside. They're all trapped in the interior, so it's Germans versus Japanese, and it seems like the Japanese will end up winning this thing at the top with some Russians weirdly trapped in here. They might be able to get out. I'm not entirely sure. But we could sort of see the armies spreading out down below, all going to meet each other. It looks like over this way is where we are going to have the first engagement, the first major engagement. I believe these are the Japanese. Yes, these are the Japanese soldiers over here. And don't see their tanks. There's their tanks. There we go. There's a Chinu right there. Or is it a Chiha? I can't. It might be a Chinu, actually. I have a lot of trouble with Japanese tanks, especially in Men of War. I always get them all confused. And then over here we've got the Russian soldiers, and they should have some T-34s. Yes, they do have T-34s available to them over here, and these guys are about to collide with each other. Now, all of these units are just base stats. I did not adjust any of the stats for any of these units. I think they're relatively balanced, honestly. I think the Americans might be a tricky one to figure out, though, because those Thompsons have really good fire rates, but they have to get so much closer to the enemies to use them, so that might be tricky. Either way, both sides seem to start firing at just about the same time. Russians should have like a Mosin Nagant, I think. Actually, that looks like the SKS, which is a better rifle than the Mosin Nagant, so good for them. There you go, and they are starting to engage in battle, and actually the numbers for deaths are all going up at the top right corner. You can check that out up there. So there, yeah, there's a lot of death happening at the moment, and I'm very curious to see who wins this thing. In the past, we've had to basically like use like, oh, this Thompson soldier here is actually British and stuff like that, and the shotgun unit is the American unit in order to represent the different World War II factions in Ultimate Epic Battle Simulator 2, but I'm very glad that a lot of these different modders for Ultimate Epic Battle Simulator 2 are adding new World War II units to the battlefield and things like that. That makes it pretty exciting. I'm hoping for like the British to be added and the French. I think that would be sick. The Italians too. Really just make it a whole World War II shenanigan. I think that would be pretty fun, honestly. But either way, just look at all the Japanese coming forward, all the Russians coming forward, an absolute horde from each. And the T-34s are moving in here. They're not firing quite yet. They are taking some damage. How much health do they have? They have 10,000 health. That one's about half dead already just from chiclet fire hitting it and things like that. That's no good. But they do appear to need to get pretty close to fire, which is not great. And the Chihas, I think, are a little further back. Yeah, they're way further back in this battle, so they'll be coming in as almost backup here. But let's go ahead and check in on some of the other nations. Over this way, we can see the Japanese are fighting some of these U.S. soldiers over here, and there's that rattling of the Thompson machine guns. Like I said, they can spam fire so much easier, but they do have to be quite a bit closer. And we've got Shermans coming in too, and these Shermans appear to be firing a good bit as well, so that's very nice. So yeah, the US actually seems to be doing decently over here against the Japanese. We'll have to wait and see in total how they do, but there's some of those explosive Sherman shots hitting the Japanese soldiers, blowing them sky high. That's kind of fun to see. Alright, but it does look like the Japanese sent more soldiers over this way than the US sent, so that'll come into play too. Let's go check out US versus Germans over here, yeah. Alright, Germans getting involved in the battlefield over this way against the United States. We've got more Shermans on the battlefield. Are there the Panzer 5s? The Panzers over here? Yeah. Oh, actually, a lot of the Panthers are dead already. There's a couple still alive. A couple still kicking. Oh, that one just died. Okay, so the Germans having a little bit of trouble when it comes to their vehicles on this battlefield. Interesting. Maybe they're a little bit weaker than the Shermans? That could be the case. I'm not entirely sure, but that definitely seems to be plausible here. Again, it's very hard to tell who's winning this battle as of yet. It will take some time before we truly determine who is going to win this thing, and most of it seems pretty even at the top right in terms of losses and stuff like that. At least fairly even, so it's going to be tough. Let's check out Germans versus Russians. This is the final front of the battlefield that we have not seen. We've got a Panther right here firing away, missing its shots horribly. Holy cow, that went way over the horizon. And in fact, some Russian soldiers flanking around the side of that Sherman, or Panther, my bad. And it does end up dying. Bye-bye, Panther. Oh, and there's some more dead Panthers over here, too. R.I.P. Apparently the Panther is not very good, even though, like, historically, that would probably be the best tank here. It's a heavy tank. The M4A4 Sherman's just a medium tank, T-34 is just a medium tank, and the Chinu is also just a medium tank. Probably has the highest caliber gun too, so a little bit historically inaccurate there, but it is what it is, dude. I don't know, historically, if I had 1 million men from every single one of these armies fighting against each other, and let's say it was like late war and resources were not a problem, they were all exact same equipment and stuff like that, I would probably give it to either the Japanese or the Germans. The Japanese and the Germans were definitely had the most war experience at that time, as well as the best trained soldiers. Then I would probably give it to the Americans, who also had like decently trained soldiers, but were pretty green when it came to the overall war. And then finally I'd give it to the Russians, who weren't really able to train their soldiers super well. I mean, resources aren't a problem here, as we said in the scenario, but you know, they did have very limited resources and stuff like that to even train their soldiers, so that's why they weren't super trained. They were very, you know, they had good veterancy in terms of like just being a part of the war for a very long time, so there's that at least going for them. But yeah, I don't know, I'd probably give it to either the Germans or the Japanese, and I'm leaning more so towards the Japanese. Either way, it seems like the Germans really didn't send enough soldiers over here to fight the Russians. They sent most of their troops over to fight the Americans down that way. And so this small contingency of Germans is just getting slowly swarmed. And I think that was just kind of a tactical error. They didn't use their resources super well. Why don't we head back and do another loop and see where each side stands now. Ooh, we do have some downed Russian T-34s out here. Yeah, the tanks are going down most of the time before they even reach the front. All right, we can see over here we do have a slight engulfment by the Japanese soldiers. They're kind of working their way around and hitting these Russian soldiers from the side over here, which means that these guys probably have a superior force at the moment over here, and the Japanese are beating up the Russians pretty good. Look at this full charge over here. Full charge. Very nice. Going in. Diving deep. Not too shabby. I'm not seeing any Japanese tanks still on the battlefield. Ooh, the right side, though, for the Japanese is fairly weak. This forest seems to have gone to the Russians, but then this side is still decent for the Japanese. Very interesting. All sides are struggling in this battlefield. It's quite unique. Let's go check out the Americans over this way versus the Russians. Oh, interesting. This entire battle turned to the side over here. What the heck? Oh my god, there's still Shermans left alive, though. The Sherman's clearly the best tank in this entire game right now, so that might help the Americans win the edge, but they do, I think, have the weakest guns. Wow, the Japanese over here, very interesting. They sent a lot of soldiers to fight the Americans over this way, and somehow the Americans won the very right side, pivoted, and are now fighting the bulk of the Japanese on the left side. This is very, very unique. Why don't we do a quick time-lapse of this, because I'd love to see the American final stand here against the Japanese soldiers with their tanks involved. This could be very cool. Alright guys, in fast motion there, we got to witness the destruction of that American army. They just didn't have enough soldiers to keep up with the Japanese over here. Even their Shermans, while they did do big things, ended up dying out, which is no bueno. No bueno at all. So these Americans are going to go down. They're hopefully going to get a few more kills on the Japanese soldiers over here. Oh, they're down. They're down. Okay, so the Japanese over here, they can either go reinforce their forces over here that are fighting the Russians, although it seems like the Russians might have won this over here. Well, let's see the big reveal. This could be Russian or Japanese. I'm going to guess it's a Russian victory. Let's see. That is a Russian victory over here. So the Japanese could go and continue to fight more Russians. The Russo-Japanese War, however many parts there are. They've always had a little bit of beef, haven't they? And then over here, we've got the Americans still fighting more Germans. So the Japanese could come and flank the Americans over this way. And this is looking like an American victory against the Germans over here. Just like in 1945, baby. Oh, yeah, the Americans are engulfing these Germans. The Germans are definitely struggling a good bit over here. So good for the Americans over that way. But then the Germans versus the Russians over this way, I'm going to say it was probably a Russian victory. The Russians having 2 victories on the battlefield right now puts them at a very good advantage. Yeah, that's a pretty good advantage right there. So they could come and fight the Americans and the Germans over that way, or they could reinforce their soldiers over there. I don't know what's going to happen yet, but since there's only fighting going on over here currently, why don't we go ahead and time-lapse this of the Americans fighting the Germans. Hopefully they don't choke it. The Germans do have this nice little valley area, which makes it so the Americans have to come up over the top of these hills in order to fight them, which makes it so the Germans are in a strategically advantaged position, but they are disadvantaged in terms of numbers, so it's a little bit hard, but hopefully the Americans don't choke this. Okay, so the U.S. is definitely choking out the Germans over here. I don't think that they're going to lose this one. Yeah, they're even coming into the backs of some of these Germans who are finishing off a few U.S. soldiers over here. So it looks pretty good for the U.S. But I will say the Russians are coming in from the flank. Comrades, this is not good. This is very not good. Oh, what have we here? Oh, the Japanese joined the party too. Very not good. Okay, so now the U.S. is officially getting distracted by those 2 other nations. So the Germans might have just been saved by 2 different factions coming in the flank. That might have just single-handedly saved the Germans and screwed over the Americans. Because the Americans now are fighting a 3-front war. That's so bad. Very bad. So over this way. Where are the rest of the Japanese over here? Okay, so there are still a multitude of Japanese soldiers over here, and it looks like they are going to be engaging with some of those Russian remnants over here. So that's just sort of a small mini engagement going on over here, but I will say the main war is still going to be going on over that way. But the winner of this, the winner between the Russo-Japanese War Part 5 or whatever, that could determine the winner over here, because they can then go reinforce. But that would take quite a while. Oh, my cat's coughing up a hairball. Oh no. You okay, Oliver? I think he's okay. Okay. Yes, this is very not good. We now have a multitude of armies all fighting each other out here. Let's just time-lapse the overhead of this thing, the bird's eye view, because this is going to be a lot. I'll try and get above the blood patches here. That's a little bit better. Makes it a little easier to see. So that inner blob is the United States. The folks to the far left are the Germans. The folks to the bottom right are the Japanese. And the folks at the top are the Russians. So the U.S. is fighting all of these nations all at once. I think they're going to lose. I think that this situation actually screwed them over, which sucks. I love this battle because it is very even. Everything appears to be extremely even. I mean, certain countries are doing slightly better and stuff like that, but it's mainly due to tactical reasons, which makes this kind of fun. Okay, that was about 5 minutes there, and it's time to check out what's going down. So right now, the Germans are still in this thing pretty strongly. So are the Russians, but the Japanese and the US each only have 100 soldiers left alive, which is kind of incredible. That's how the mighty have fallen. Well, the Japanese never did super well, but the US was winning this thing. I'm pretty sure. The Russians are coming in and they're about to curb stomp these Germans left alive here. Absolutely. Absolutely. The Russians have 140,000 left. The Germans have a mere 16,000. Yikes, man. Oh, are there still troopers on top of Mount Olympus, by the way? I guess we should have checked in on what happened with these guys. There's no more Russians inside. So I don't really know. They probably went down and joined the battle. That's probably what happened. And then these, I'm guessing, are Russians. Yes, the Russians over here beat the Japanese over here. And then they swooped in, killed the rest of the Americans over this way, killed the Japanese over this way, and are now killing the Germans over this way. The Russians just absolutely curb stomped pretty much everyone. There's 4,000 Germans left alive. The Russians, I mean, it wasn't an undeserved victory or anything like that. I feel like the people who deserved to win the most were definitely the US, based on like all that they took on and how well they did taking on everyone. The Japanese did probably the worst overall. The Germans did pretty bad, honestly. The only reason that they survived over here against the US was because the US got flanked by 2 other armies. And the Russians, I mean, the Russians did fight very well against, like, the Japanese. They did do that, but then they kind of flanked in and came and stole the US's glory over here. It's like, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Either way, there's apparently still 107 US soldiers, 19 Japanese soldiers, and 367 German soldiers somewhere on the battlefield. They're probably glitched somewhere, but there's 136,000 Russians left alive, so that is going to be a Russian victory there. Wow, okay, what a battle. That was definitely one of the best battle royales we've ever done in Ultimate Epic Battle Simulator 2. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and comment down below. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace. I hope you guys enjoyed that video. Be sure to click that subscribe button for more content, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be alerted to whenever I live stream or upload. Thanks so much.